the reason is to be with your friends. And the reason is to be with your friends. What? You know you're doing your Pinkie Pie voice, right? I was not.
Actually, Twilight, yeah, you were. In fact, you were originally going to be Pinkie Pie before the show started. Upon watching A Hearth-Warming Tale, I didn't expect there to be yet another episode to use the Christmas Carol formula. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it did feel odd that it was used a second time, as I never saw any other show commit to that before. Now, I could be mistaken. The last episode to use this was For Whom the Sweetie Belle Toils, as I reviewed it with Silverquill, unveiling the past, present, and future of one's actions and the leading consequences down the line. I guess the staff wanted to do their Christmas Carol formula the traditional way, compared to a mundane episode. Again, I don't mind seeing MLP take on this a second time. Though that isn't much for me to say on behalf of this, since the episode has gained a somewhat polarizing reputation. There's been complaints in the past that using the Christmas Carol formula is a done-to-death cliche that some viewers immediately turn their backs on. In general, I keep myself open-minded to this formula being recycled because despite how done-to-death it is, I believe that the theme behind the Christmas Carol has a particular relevance to this day. At the very least, I have a short relatability to the episode. For reasons explained, I'm going to put a pin on that for later. Until then, for how this episode gave its own spin on the actual Christmas Carol formula, it stands as my favorite Hearth-Warming episode. The main plot involves Starlight's lack of enthusiasm of the holiday as she perceives it to be a silly event. Twilight tries to enlighten and convince her that there's more to the holiday as she tends to read her the Christmas Carol story. In this one, the role for Ebenezer Scrooge is Snowfall Frost, as her actions are to remove the holiday rather than neglect everyone who was close to Ebenezer. Compared to its previous Hearth-Warming episodes, A Hearth-Warming Tale is very musical-driven. At first glance, that can be taken as another issue, as some people are not fans of musicals. I, on the other hand, am not only open to musicals, but I adore the majority of the songs here. So much so that when the episode begins, it plays a musical number that puts a smile on my face.
Pony's voices fill the night, Hearth-Warming Eve is here once again. Happy hearts so full and bright, Hearth-Warming Eve is here once again. Oh, what a sight! Look at the light, all for tonight. Hearth-Warming Eve is here once again.
Though not the best song of the episode, it definitely gets me pumped every time. The cheery, fast pacing of the lyrics and the slowdown in a few areas to get the emotional end, and picking up the pace back up adds more excitement. But that's not going without me being a musical snob at times. Case in point, Say Goodbye to the Holiday.
Say goodbye to the holiday. Prepare the spell, no hesitation. All memories shall fade away. See Equestria's new transformation.
It's composed decently as it has a somewhat Disney cinematic villain vibe to it. The lyrics have a nice consistent set of notes, along with a sinister beat. But a few are slowed down a little too much. I know that many of you will disagree with me on this, and that's fine. It's a mild annoyance to me as it feels out of place and takes me off rhythm from faster-paced lyrics. On the contrary, the best songs are obviously The Seeds of the Past, Pinky's Present, and Luna's Future, each of which are distinctively and cleverly stood out as they're all catchy and beautifully composed to capture the right emotion. Discussing them apart, I'll first talk about The Seeds of the Past.
As a young thing, life sure is something. You go making choices large and small. Always growing like a seedling, and playing is like dreaming. And before you know it, big and tall.
This song is my favorite in the whole episode. The composition is very optimistic, until the second half, as the lyrics are straightforward and relatable to those with past experiences that they are challenged with. Applejack's voice matches with the tone perfectly as we learn about Snowfall's first obstacle.
The
the seeds of the past. We grow up so fast. Some hurts never go away.
This particular line speaks to me not just on a personal level, but possibly to others. Relatably, we all had some unfortunate experiences within our lives where they were so hurtful it shapes and warps our perspectives and our way of thinking. Through our insecurities, we try to change ourselves, thinking it'll prevent those said experiences, but ultimately it doesn't change what happened, and it inadvertently keeps us in this limbo and becomes our comfort zone when developing negative habits. In Snowfall's case, it hits hard as we learn that she was lectured harshly by her own peer, Professor Fanart.
Real magic takes time to learn. It's your choice. Spend your time learning to become a powerful unicorn, or play with your toys and make nothing of yourself. What an asshole!
Unfortunately, we don't learn much about Fanart as he was only there briefly and hasn't had any real comeuppance on his end. But more importantly, this all leads to what Snowfall has to learn when confronting her rediscoveries of her spirits and excitement being shot down. In the shoes of a child, or in general I should say, no one should ever have their fun ruined. Playing the devil's advocate though, Fanart is right that you do need your time to train yourself and work hard, but sometimes you need a break, so it wasn't right of Flint to crush and ruin Snowfall's fun. As we learn about this, it does its job in getting me to sympathize with Snowfall's inner demon, and it transitions smoothly to the next song, Pinky's Present.
Take a look at everything around you, all the smells that surely will astound you. Open up your heart, it will surround you in the magic of heartwarming Eve.
This song is a lot of fun to listen to. That jazzy swing beat, the uplifting atmosphere, and what it means for Snowfall's current state. Other than addressing what Snowfall is missing out on, this song enlightens the values enjoying gift giving and what moments of fun and excitement mean for everyone. This overall implies that they are to be cherished as they bring out unforgettable moments. Obviously, this is the realization Snowfall needs to know about, as it has taken that away from everyone that she even once loved from her childhood. There isn't much else to say other than I love the composition and the old school style of jazz mixing so well with the encouraging lyrics. Eventually, she starts to feel more regretful and realize her error as expected. At this point, we're moved on to the final spirit being Luna's future.
Whatever might have been, all the dreams that ponies share. Because of you, Snowfall Frost, now the future is a cold nightmare.
This song was a massive favorite from the fandom, and it's easy to see why. It's cynical and downright epic. This is all no surprise, as this is supposed to be the lowest point for Snowfall, but it's definitely different from the Christmas Carol. In that story, Ebenezer discovers the close ones he remembers are gone and comes to a terrifying fate, until he's back to his room. Comparing the third acts of these two, they both share their ups and downs. Snowfall's commitment was devastating, wiping out all existence. It's a nice and brutal twist, but the story was so centered around her so much that it didn't really have as much of an impact with the other characters. In contrast, however, while Scrooge's future may not have been on that magnitude, he got to learn who the others were, and it hit much closer to home when he's revealed their fate. It sounds like a cop-out, but I respect both of these through contrast. Should there be any debate, however, I would leave the decision up to you. Diving into Starlight's primary feelings about the holiday, it does seem a bit forced on the surface to show that there are some people who don't care for Christmas, and that it should be taken with more care. This brings up something that I have to talk about, which is what I found often misunderstood by some people. I heard this complaint that this and the moral of the Christmas Carol is that you have to celebrate the holidays against your will, regardless if you like it or not. If you ask me, that is completely missing the point. When it came to the Christmas Carol story, Ebenezer Scrooge wasn't just neglectful of the holiday, he was very selfish and greedy over the importance of everyone else's values, to where when he was shown the fate of everyone he's remembered, it's hurtful. In Starlight's case, she hasn't had much of a chance to embrace the holiday, which would make sense given her circumstances of her past, as we're reminded once again from Spike.
Snowfall doesn't like Hearth-warming Eve, so she decides to cast a spell to get rid of it altogether? That seems a little extreme.
Says the pony who tried to make every pony the same by replacing their cutie marks with equal signs.
Okay, setting that joke aside, it wasn't forcing Starlight to celebrate the holiday, but to get her to understand better about what it is everyone celebrates about. In fact, Twilight leads the decision up to Starlight at the end of the episode. Some have argued that Twilight was coming off passive-aggressive at first, but really, she was being genuine to her, giving Starlight some time to decide according to the next transition. Finally, in Snowfall Frost's case, she tried to erase a beloved holiday. Despite how threatening it was in Equestria, you're downright taking away everyone else's enjoyment and camaraderie, which is downright cruel and worse than the misinterpreted moral that some people have addressed. No one likes to take someone else's enjoyment away. At the end, Starlight makes her decision in joining the festivities, singing along and participating to everyone's excitement. In addition, I respect Twilight in encouraging Starlight in doing so because for all we know, she may have felt left out and felt some sort of isolation in which was addressed last season. And very commonly, it's her giving her happiness to others. So it's more than just an obvious fitting ending. It fits the point of the holidays in general. Happiness, excitement, and spreading happiness and excitement to others. All of this backtracks to how I relate to the episode on a personal level. From the beginning of it, I was in Starlight's shoes, not having to care about Christmas. Keep in mind that having a personal relation to anything doesn't make the episode any better, but rather how it can guide you in finding a perspective that provides more food for thought. You can take this with a grain of salt or not, but I'm going to be sharing my personal experience that I'm sure in some way, shape, or form, some of you may have something similar. Much like other kids, I was always excited for the holidays. Snow, colorful decorations, a warm fireplace to sit with a hot cup of cocoa, ready to open presents. I couldn't see how anything could go wrong whenever it came to such an event. Little did I expect is that later in the years, I started to get so carried away about the holiday where I was being spoiled. At one point, I snarled at some gifts that I didn't want and was so eager about getting more gifts to the point of greed. Was I punished for that? Oh yeah, I definitely deserved it. Obviously, the holidays are not about the gifts, but in hindsight, my parents spent the effort to make me happy as much as possible to where I was being a spoiled brat. As I grew older, I learned that Christmas preparations was a lot more stressful than I expected. Given my past behavior, I realized that I took the holiday way too much for granted. It eventually came to a point where I no longer wrote down any Christmas lists. Remembering how I acted as a kid, I was very resentful of myself and didn't want to risk hurting my parents' feelings again. Eventually, I stopped caring about Christmas and developed an impression that it was now a marketing trope where the real meaning was forgotten. On the year me and Keyframe lived together for the first time, she was shocked to hear me withhold my enthusiasm for the holiday. This was the first time we were going to have Christmas together in person. Knowing how important that was, I couldn't continue this attitude anymore. So I sat down and explained everything to her as a Skype call of my close colleagues were listening to share their 2 cents. As they understood me, they advised me to remember the happy times I'll have with Key and not worry about the commercialism. Making things more mentally challenging, I was in a marathon of work days. As a graveyard shift, it's exhausting. Christmas morning was not only one of them, but that morning led me to scream profanely in my car over the stressful nature after I finally got off, damaging my voice on top of that. It was the first morning I wasn't with my family, and processing that on top of the stressful day was a really rough spot. Now mind you, my parents had me celebrate Christmas a week in advance for personal reasons, so I don't hold them responsible for the circumstances of that year. But it wasn't nearly as magical as the actual mornings were celebrated. However, I had the rest of the night off, and taking the aforementioned advice, the evening was very relaxing. Thespio came and drove us to a neighborhood filled with beautiful decorations, and we shared some laughs in his car on the way back. Not only was Key happy that night, but I was happy cuddling with her and keeping her warm in bed with hot cocoa. Christmas that year retaught me a lesson, and it's the lesson that I perceived from Starlight and what I think is the actual lesson from the Christmas Carol. Enjoy the moments you have with others because things don't last forever. Fun memories with friends and family are more valuable to yourself than it is with any spoils you are given. It sounds cheesy, but they do project happy thoughts, reminding you there are good times in your life and there are more fun times to pursue. This could be the case anywhere, but with Christmas, it's all about spreading joy and happiness to others, or at the very least, it does remind us about the values of spreading joy and happiness to others. Yes, Christmas does involve a stressful nature when it comes to various preparations, and partially I can understand why some don't like Christmas from that expense. But to me, it's still worth the while in the end. So as a Hearthswarming tale is another cookie cutter of a Christmas Carol, maybe there's a reason why. It still carries something morally important that's still relevant today. I'm sure others also had a rough patch in their lives relating to the holidays, and I'd be willing to hear it from any of you. Until next time, this is GoldenFox, and happy holidays.